It's been more than 100 years since those few brave souls first took to the ice to play their game. Little did they realize that hockey would become their king, and that a simple bowl, Lord Stanley's Cup, would be the crown that warriors would fight for. Through the years, across the centuries divide and on, men and teams would battle hard to win that prize. A sheet of ice has become a stage where championships are won and lost, where the torch of victory is the guiding light, passed from generation to generation, as our heroes bring heart and soul to a game that brings us to our feet. But there will always be those who play with more than skate and stick. For those who play with heart and soul, hockey is more than a mere game. It is a passion born in youth, a desire to be the best, to face the foe and emerge victorious. For these few, the game becomes a personal journey, from frozen ponds and backyard rinks to the bright lights of the NHL, and the ultimate reward, membership in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
My father, when I left for Quebec City, always said, be honest, respect others, and give the little extra, which is going to help you to have success in life.
Jean Beliveau's Hall of Fame career was a personal journey that began on a small backyard rink in Victoriaville, Quebec. A great player and a great leader, Beliveau continued the legacy of the mighty Montreal Canadiens, capturing an amazing 10 Stanley Cups in 20 NHL seasons. Jean Beliveau was born August 31st, 1931 in Trois-Rivières, Quebec, and grew up in the town of Victoriaville, where winter was spent on the ice and learning to skate was part of every childhood.
My father gave me a pair of skates for Christmas when I was around 4 years old, and if we go back in the late 30s, our winter were a lot longer. Everybody had a little ice surface behind the house. And I started, like all my friends, behind the house and through the school. And when we had only half an hour, like on Sunday morning before High Mass, without skate, we would play a little shinny game, and I've always felt that that's where we learn how to stick handle. I remember very clearly some of my friends at that time were as good and probably better than I was. And as it turned out, I was the one who came out of it.
Jean would begin his junior career in his hometown of Victoriaville. While his exceptional talents were obvious from the start, it was size and strength that first set him apart from other players.
I played against Jean as his junior when he was playing for Victoriaville. I knew he was going to be a great center. I mean, even the pants was too short for him. He was too big. You could see his thigh.
In 1949, Beliveau left Victoriaville for Quebec City to continue his junior career with the Citadel. While Jean established himself as a future superstar, his outstanding play helped others reevaluate their own future.
We were playing the Quebec Citadels. Jean Beliveau was playing with the Citadels. Boom Boom Geoffrion was a teammate of mine. And the coach made a brilliant decision this night that I was to shadow Jean Beliveau. When he went on, I was to go on. When he came off, I was to come off. And the instructions were, Scotty, we'd like to keep him off the score sheet tonight. And I think Jean got a hat trick and 4 assists, and I decided that if I was going to stay in hockey, it wasn't going to be as a player, and so my interest then turned to officiating.
I played against him 4 years. And I said to myself, I says, if ever we break in the National Hockey League with Dickie Moore, Jean Beliveau, and myself, I hope that I played with Big Jean. I knew his style. I didn't have to look. I knew what he was doing. I mean, it was just like a book already written. No problem.
At the end of his celebrated junior career, most expected to see Beliveau in a Montreal Canadiens jersey. But the people of Quebec City had been good to Jean, and to show his appreciation, he would put his NHL career on hold, turning pro with the Senior League Quebec Aces.
I was so well treated in Quebec City, and don't forget, this was a new life for me. I was like a king wherever I went, wherever I want. I came from a very, not poor, but because my father had a lot of heart and always made sure that we had a lot of food on the table. But this was a completely new life to me. And I felt so good in Quebec City.
He received at that time a considerable sum of money to stay and play another year with Quebec in the Quebec League, and I mean, it was unheard of. But he was so popular in Quebec. I mean, he was without question the most popular person in the city of Quebec. He stood out because he was so extraordinarily big, yet even from the earliest days there was a gracefulness to his size. Usually a young player that is that big has an awkward stage, but certainly from the time I ever saw him play, there was this long, smooth stride and this tremendous carriage he had.
He refused to sign with the Canadiens. It's the best junior in the world, and he could have signed for the highest dollar. And he said, no, I owe something to those fans in Quebec. I'm going to play senior hockey there for a couple of years before I joined the NHL. You think of what that might have cost him statistically over his career, and what it cost him monetarily, I couldn't reckon, but I always admired him for the fact that he did that.
While playing for the Aces, Beliveau made 2 brief appearances with the Montreal Canadiens, and with an amazing 6 goals in 5 games, showed that he was more than ready for the NHL. After 2 seasons in Quebec, Beliveau knew it was time to take that step.
When I reached the spring of 1953, I realized that I would be turning 22 in August. I said that the time had come to go. I want to prove to the public, I want to prove to myself that I could play. It's nice to have success in a minor professional league, but none of those leagues were the NHL, and I wanted to go to the NHL.
That if you had your choice of any hockey player playing hockey today, professional or amateur, who would you want me to buy for your club? And I only named one man, and that man is right here, Jean Beliveau.
I can't recall it up until that time, other than maybe the Second World War, anything that had bigger news or was a bigger item. It was front page all over Montreal when he finally did come there.
In 1953, Montreal's patience was rewarded as Jean Beliveau signed with the Canadiens. In 1953, Jean Beliveau was finally in a Montreal uniform to stay. With the Canadiens, he would take to the ice alongside his hero, the game's top goal scorer, the great Maurice Rocket Richard.
Maurice, indirectly, without maybe thinking about it, was our idols, and that we wanted to imitate, or at least trying to make a career in a sport that we enjoy so much. It shows us that if you really desire something, if you work at it, that it was possible for any young Quebecers to make a career in hockey.
With Rocket Richard leading the way, Montreal was continuing a tradition of victory almost as old as the game itself. And to fans of the Canadiens, it was a tradition that Jean Beliveau would be expected to continue.
When I came in the Canadian room, that famous sentence, who's in a Canadian room, failing hands, pass you the torch, be yours to hold it high, was there. The torch always been a symbol for us to pass from one generation to the other.
Beliveau represented a new generation, and while Montreal fans had celebrated his arrival, the opposition was less generous, and Jean would have to use his size and strength to earn his place.
When Jean Beliveau first came in the National Hockey League, the game was dominated by the tough guys and the Ted Lindsays, the Milt Schmidts of life, you know. So they went after him. Here was this highly paid junior phenom that was going to be the next superstar, which he was. But the first couple of years, John had a tough time. And very early in his career, I don't know just how many years into it, he had enough penalties in one season that for several years after that, if you look at the Montreal Canadiens record book, team records, most penalty minutes one season, it was Jean Beliveau. But he had to establish his turf, and so along with winning scoring championships, he was spending a lot of time in the penalty box.
I think Jean Beliveau was in a class by himself, the way he played the game and controlled the puck, and I loved the way he could carry the puck with his head up. He'd see the whole ice surface, and he was such a strong man. I think we were very fortunate that he had such an even temper and he didn't get mad too often, because he could have really hurt people if he wanted to.
Was very, very competitive, give and take a pass. And when need be, a big tough guy too. He'd run you. But he was so big, no one ever run him. So you didn't see that side of him too often. You got your money's worth watching the big guy skate.
In 1955, Toe Blake replaced Dick Irvin Sr. behind the bench of the Montreal Canadiens. Blake knew that even with Montreal's star-studded lineup, teamwork was the key to victory.
The first speech that Toe Blake did in 1955 when he came in the room, he looked around and he said, I have a great hockey player here. The only way that we're going to win the Stanley Cup is if we play as a unit. And after that, I was thinking about that, and I've always thought that a great hockey player is like a great artist in different field. A great artist has the tendency to be an individual. If you're a member of a team sport and you want to win anything, you got to play together. You got to form a unit. And that's what we did, and that's why we won all those Stanley Cups.
The combination of talent and teamwork turned Montreal into the greatest dynasty the game had ever seen. In 1956, Beliveau received the Hart Trophy as most valuable player in the NHL, as Montreal captured their first of an unprecedented 5 consecutive Stanley Cup victories, an achievement yet to be equaled. As Montreal dominated the NHL, Jean Beliveau emerged as one of the greatest offensive players in the game. And as fast as Montreal was winning championships, Beliveau was winning fans.
He did everything perfect as far as I could say. He's a great hockey player, but he's, I think, as great as he was, like a few of them, they're even better people, and John was one of them.
The adulation he attracted was enormous, but he was so gracious and so good-looking. He really had the matinee idol looks and composure without any of that flash.
I introduced Big John, who was a prince of a man, to my sisters. He left, went away, and they looked at me and said, we used to be Detroit fans. They quit right there, they're big Beliveau fans.
Jean Beliveau was my mother's favorite. And I remember the first game that I played against John, and I hit him with a hip check. It was a really good hip check, and my mother was in the stands, and she wouldn't talk to me for a month.
He was elegant on the ice, he was elegant off the ice, he was elegant when he talked. He was just the most gracious, mannerly of men. I think Jean Beliveau was the player everybody wanted to be if there ever was a role model.
I always wore number 4 when I was a kid, and for me, I was trying every time that I had the puck. I used to go and skate up and saying that Jean Beliveau was going up and he's taking a shot, and I tried to skate like him. I tried to make plays like him, but it didn't work all the time. It's too bad.
But no one could play like Beliveau. A great goal scorer and a great playmaker. The perennial all-star was always among the leaders in NHL scoring. But individual statistics meant little to Beliveau. For Jean, hockey was a team game, and the Stanley Cup the only prize that mattered.
The success of the team is first. Your personal record is second. If you perform and you give your utmost, that in a team is winning, you'll be working in an atmosphere of great satisfaction, great fun, and I was very fortunate to play at a time with great teammates, and we had great success.
On the ice, Beliveau was outstanding, and in the dressing room, his calm presence provided reassurance. So in 1961, when it came time to choose a new captain to lead the Canadiens, Beliveau may have been the only one surprised by Coach Toe Blake's announcement.
Toe came back and he shook hands. He said, "Boys, here's your new captain." I couldn't believe it. I was not even an alternate captain. For a touchy moment for me, coming from my teammates was one of my greatest joy in my life.
Beliveau was probably the perfect captain as he was the perfect player. He knew how to lead, he knew how to take young players and say to them, there are lots of Stanley Cups to go around. You be patient, you don't have to fly all over the ice and score 100 goals. You just wait, the playoffs will come and the Canadiens will be there, and the 7th game undoubtedly will be winning a Stanley Cup. And I think that was his attitude. He expected his players, his teammates, to win.
Jean Beliveau had such an influence in the room that he can touch players by little things. A word, a touch, a gesture, a look. Sometimes with a great hockey player that has that kind of impact, a true captain, a look is enough to get the message across.
In 1964, Jean Beliveau received his second Hart Trophy as league MVP. Playing with unmatched skill and a sense of fair play that earned the admiration of teammates and opponents alike.
He was just like a machine. He could make plays, he could shoot, he could score goals. He knew when there was time to pass the puck. He knew when there was time to shoot the puck. He had everything figured.
I won 2 face-offs in a row against him. I thought I was doing pretty good. And the first face-off on our end, he just whipped her back, and it was in our net. I'm sure he just set me up. Made me think I was doing all right until it was real important for him to win one.
To me, he was the greatest centerman that ever played, to this day. Not disregarding Lemieux or Gretzky, but that's what he was. And he played in a tough time where checking was tough, where guys knew how to body check and knew how to hit, and you checked your man, you took your man.
If you were to say to me, you're going to start a franchise, and you got your pick of any player who ever played hockey, who would be your first choice in the draft? I'd pick Jean Beliveau. Off the ice as well as on, for what he added to a hockey team.
In 1965, Montreal was once again the most powerful team in hockey. That season, they would capture the Stanley Cup, and Beliveau would become the first recipient of the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP. And for Beliveau and the Canadiens, the winning would continue as the team captured 3 more cups before the decade drew to a close. 1970, Montreal finished out of the playoffs, and Jean Beliveau felt it was time to bring his career to a close. But Montreal general manager Sam Pollock had a different ending in mind.
Jean had a long, great career in the NHL, and I know that Jean always wanted to end his career on a very high note. I thought that maybe we could do better the next year. I didn't have any illusions that we're going to win the Stanley Cup at that time. Maybe he might consider another year. It would be a big help to the club and might work out for him too, and he agreed to that.
Belivau's decision to return for a final season would pay dividends, as he became only the 4th player in NHL history to reach the 500-goal plateau.
One of the biggest nights of Jean Beliveau at the Forum was the night he scored his 500. That night, he got a hat trick. His big goal came against Gilbert, all alone on him. He faked him on the left side, went around Gilbert. It looked so easy. It was a night that, if you were a Jean Beliveau fan, that you cannot forget.
Jean Belivau's final NHL season would have a storybook ending, as he led Montreal to a surprising victory in the 1971 Stanley Cup, bringing Jean's total to an amazing 10 Cup victories. And Beliveau did it all with style.
The greatest ambassador to hockey that I've ever seen in my life is Jean Beliveau. I think he's class. When people don't understand the word class, look at Jean Beliveau. He epitomizes it.
He had a presence and a quiet intelligence. He's just a wonderful, warm human being. For those of us that had the privilege of knowing him, it's whenever you see him, you always get that nice feeling about you're in special company.
Jean Belivau's career stands as one of the greatest in the history of the game. While his 10 Stanley Cup victories are a testament to teamwork, his individual achievements are a record of one man's greatness. Awarded the Order of Canada in 1969, Jean Beliveau showed us all how the game should be played.
I've always thought the game of hockey is the greatest game to play and the greatest game to watch. To these days, every night when I go to bed at night, I thank God to have given me the talent to have a life in professional sport.